I am back in Normandy, Isle today on another beautiful, super hot Miami day. We definitely had summer come early this year. It's been hot like this since really the end of April. Summer for most people doesn't start till June, but not here in South Florida. We get summer in April now that lasts all the way till Halloween. One thing that you guys comment on a lot, because we cover this, is foreign investment into US real estate. And it seems like for the most part, a lot of people who watch my channel, you guys think that foreigners should not be allowed to buy US real estate. And I wanted to talk about this in depth today because, you know, one of the reasons that real estate is so expensive here in the US, particularly here in Florida, is because of foreign investment into real estate. So I want to cover why these foreigners are so willing to overpay for our property here in the US, whereas most people here that live here and work here can't afford it. But these guys have no problem coming in here with cash or even purchasing it with a loan at these ridiculous prices and rates. So why is that? What is driving them to do this? Well, the first part of it really has to do with the property values, okay? I found this interesting chart today that shows how much US real estate costs in some of the most popular and most expensive areas compared to some of the most expensive real estate markets across the entire world. When you look at this on a worldwide scale, even super expensive markets like New York and LA and San Francisco can look somewhat affordable compared to what things cost in other areas. Here's an example of this. So we're going to be talking about this in square meters because that's how real estate is measured throughout the rest of the world. We only do square feet here in the US. But anyhow, San Francisco, for example, residential real estate there costs about $7,180 per square meter. But in London, it's $26,262 per square meter, $28,570 in Hong Kong, and almost $11,000 per square meter in Canada, and in Mumbai, it's almost $11,000 per square meter as well. So the costs really are astronomical in different parts of the world compared to even one of the most expensive cities in the entire country, United States. In fact, when you look at this chart, guys, you can see that the San Jose, Santa Clara Valley in Silicon Valley is literally the most expensive place in the entire United States when measured in price per square meter at $8,970 per square meter, okay? But that's nothing when you look at the other side of the chart from some of these global cities that cost that much. In order to get a cheaper place than that, you're literally buying real estate in Moscow, in Russia, okay? That's, you know, that's the first global real estate market here that actually is cheaper than Silicon Valley, okay? And the other ones are far more expensive, as you can tell. And then when you go all the way to the bottom of the list, you got Grand Rapids, Michigan being at the bottom at only $1,450 per square meter, which is equivalent to buying a property in Kingston, Jamaica. So this is the number one reason why so many foreigners are drawn to buying here in the US, because this chart shows you just how affordable it is here versus many other areas across the entire world. Here's the second biggest reason why. There is a lack of restriction by the US government on who can buy real estate here. What do you know? In fact, the government doesn't restrict any foreign nationals from buying real estate as an investment property in the US. So as long as you have the money, and doesn't matter where you're from, unless you're trying to buy in Florida now, then you can buy it, guys, as long as you're not planning on living there, because if you're not a resident, you're not legally allowed to be here. They can't live in the property, but they sure can buy it for investment. And according to the National Association of Realtors, over the past 10 years, it's estimated that about $1 trillion worth of US real estate has been sold to foreign investors. Without any restrictions in place, it's no wonder that so many people have come here and decided to do it. And when you combine that with the stability of our markets compared to other places across the world, that's another big factor as well. I mean, the US government here can seize property from people through the use of eminent domain. Say, wherever I'm walking right now, they need to expand this road into 4 lanes instead of 2. Well, they can come knocking on this guy's door and say, hey, we'll buy your property at fair market value through eminent domain. You don't really have a choice, but at least we'll pay you. Well, in other countries, they can just flat out take it from you, and the governments there are much more unstable, and there's so much more uncertainty on how things might work out in these areas. So in general, people that live in foreign countries that have seen harsher tactics on how the government can just take your real estate, they look at the US as a more safe haven investment in terms of stability and not worrying about having to get their property robbed away from them. Also, a lot of foreign nationals that invest in real estate here claim that they get much better rental returns here in the US than they would in their home country, and that can be for a lot of different reasons. One of them is the affordability aspect, like we already covered. If you're paying $20,000 per square meter for a property, it's probably pretty difficult, if not impossible, to get a place like that to have positive cash flow. So the better the deal you can purchase the property for, then the more likely it is you're going to be able to get some positive cash flow out of it. That, along with the fact that here in the US, tenants earn dollars and can pay you in dollars versus other currencies that aren't worth nearly as much. So there's that aspect to it as well. Now, one of the other major reasons that foreign investors buy here, guys, not only because we let them, but also because it's very easy for them to actually get a loan. I mean, I don't know if you know this or not, but foreign nationals can get loans to buy real estate here as well, not just you and me. And they can do it without even having a credit score. And you might ask, well, how is that possible, Michael? Because I have to have, great credit and all of this to be able to get the loan. How can somebody from another country just come in here and buy with no credit score? Well, even though they don't have credit score requirements for these foreign national borrowers, there is a list of requirements that they do need to meet in order to be able to get these loans. It's not like just anyone can get it. So the other thing that they like about it is that they can get a fixed interest rate loan here, which is not something that's very common in other parts of the world. Now, in order for a foreign national to get a loan here, it's not like they can just come here, have nothing and be able to just get a mortgage on a property here. It's not that simple. They need to have their passport. They need to have a valid US visa. They need to actually go through an international credit report, okay? And they have to have 2 years history of employment with contact information. They need 2 years history of residency status wherever they live right now, and whether they own or they rent, details on that sort of thing. They're going to look into whether you own property already in the US or what kind of property you own outside the US. They're going to look if you have any liens or judgments or foreclosures filed against you in your home country or other countries. So it's not like anyone from another country can just waltz in here and go into the bank and get a loan on a property. You need to be still well qualified in terms of where you come from. And on top of that, usually the loan requirements are much stricter in the sense that you have to put a larger down payment, many times at least 30% down, and the interest rates are going to be higher. So it's not like they're getting the best financing terms ever because they're foreign nationals. It's not like that, guys. It's actually worse than it is for you and me. And think about it. If they stop paying, then the bank can still repossess the property. They can still go back and get that place. So it's not like the bank is taking on a tremendous risk either, because if it doesn't work out, they can just come in and take the property like they would if you or me were to buy it. But I understand the frustration because so many people are working paycheck to paycheck here in this country, trying to just get by, and the housing market seems to be more competitive than ever before. And to make matters worse right now, in order to afford a $500,000 home, guys, you need to be bringing in about $150K a year household income to be able to afford a property that's $500,000. Of course, not every home costs $500,000. There's still plenty of places where houses cost less. But let's not forget that the median home price right now throughout the country is about $400 grand still. So it's creeping up pretty close to that $500,000 mark. It's not like $500,000 is a crazy amount of money for a house anymore when the median price nationwide is $400K. And the monthly payments on something like this is just astronomical as well, guys. If you buy a $500,000 house, you put 10% down, which is 50 grand, and you get a 30-year fixed interest rate right now at 7.23%, plus your property taxes and insurance, your monthly payment is going to be roughly $3,800 a month. You might as well just round it to 4 grand a month in order to just have a $500,000 house right now. And that's with no other additional expenses that come up. And just to be able to afford the median price home right now, that according to Realtor.com is the $430,000 price point, and that changes wildly depending on where you look. I think it's closer to 400 grand, but let's run with their example here. If you're gonna buy a median price home at 430,000, using that same math, guys, you're still gonna need a down payment of $43,000 in order to have a house payment that's $3,250 a month, and you need to earn 128 grand a year to be able to qualify for something like that. And what's the big problem? Well, the big problem is that the average annual salary across the country is only $68,000 a year. So clearly, you have to be in a 2-income household earning about that much to be able to afford the median price home right now. If you're single, forget it. However, there are options. You know, when you are just by yourself, you can buy a small condo, 1-bedroom, studio apartment, something like that. That's up to you, it's your preference. And also, it's not like houses cost 400 grand across the entire country. There's plenty of markets out there where you can still buy a house well under 200K. Whether or not you want to live there, that's your prerogative, but we've covered that countless times before as well. But let's look further into this, guys, because affordability is obviously a huge problem for people right now. And according to the US Census Bureau, okay, average US household income right now is $71,000 a year, and that's household. So these numbers obviously change quite a bit depending on which source of information you're looking at. You got ZipRecruiter saying that the average salary is $68,000 a year, but according to the US Census Bureau, you know, average household income is only 71 grand a year. So that's a pretty big discrepancy right there, because household could mean you got more than one person in there working. So say that this is you, this is your household, you bring in this median income of $71,000 a year. Well, then you can only afford a house that's anywhere between $150,000 to $250,000. So you're pretty much stuck with the markets that are not very expensive, guys. You can't even buy the median price home. So you're pretty much forced to live in an area where it's cheaper. You guys catching anything? Any fish? No? But herein lies the other problem with all of this. Not only are you stuck with looking at the price range between 150 to 250K if you're just the average US household right now, but also lenders will often try to push you into getting something even more expensive, guys. They'll approve people's debt to income ratios right now as high as 45%, okay? The standard rule of thumb is you don't want your house payment to be more than about 28 to 30% of your monthly income. If you have a $75,000 a year household income, for example, your lender could stretch you into a $275,000 home if you don't have a lot of debt or payments outside of your house payment. So you really can't listen to the bank on what they tell you can afford. You need to listen to your gut and what you know inside you can afford, because that's one problem that a lot of people with buyer's remorse stories have right now, is they just stretch way too far to get into their current home because people did all sorts of crazy things. They paid over asking price, they waived contingencies to get into the house, and they're reeling from it now, guys. They're paying the consequences of that. So don't be like those people. But this is where it comes into being super important that I'm always telling people to make sure you pay your bills, you know, make sure you have a good credit score, make sure you don't have any unnecessary debt, especially carrying credit card balances, guys, because the better financial shape you're in, then the more home you're going to be able to qualify for. Even if you don't spend all of that money, having the option to be able to is extremely important if you're out there looking to buy in an environment like this. If you want to be able to buy a home, guys, you got to have less debt. This is when being financially responsible really comes in handy. Just because the bank says you can have your loan with a 45% debt to income ratio doesn't mean that you should accept it, because that's pretty much a financial disaster waiting to happen for most people, unfortunately. And one related story to this is recently the FHFA, they decided to get rid of this new price adjustment on borrowers when they're getting loans that are higher than a 40% debt to income ratio. There was a fee that was supposed to go into effect beginning on August 1st, and with all of the lobbying and concern about this, they decided to pull back on this and not do this anymore. The Realtor Association is super happy about this because they're saying that, you know, already at a time when market affordability is at an all-time low, people are already stretched thin and have to pay an extra fee on top of everything else. Well, okay, I agree with that. I'm never in favor of paying higher fees, but you know, the real motive here behind all of this is to just make sure that the housing market continues forward and people can still buy, because after all, realtors are in the business of selling homes, guys. So any obstacle that gets in the way of that, of course, the Realtor Association is not going to be in favor of. But one thing I am in favor of is the National Association of Realtors is trying to get the FHFA to also reverse their policy that they put into place where they're charging the higher credit score borrowers in order to help subsidize the lower credit score borrowers, which was a huge uproar that we talked about recently. Instead, they should be requiring higher credit scores and larger down payments to actually offset the risk, rather than charging good credit borrowers this extra fee, which I agree with, guys. Like, if you're going to get a loan, you should be able to prove that you're eligible to get a loan, meaning you have a good credit score, you have the down payment. Just like we talked about a couple days ago with these 1% down mortgages, that's the perfect example of a lot of times when people don't have the finances to be able to actually buy a home. It seems like more and more that's who these lenders are trying to cater to right now, because that's the only people who are left, okay? Like, most of the people that can afford to buy probably already did within the last couple of years. A lot of them don't want to sell because they have good interest rates until, you know, things really start going downhill, and some people are going to be forced to sell. That's going to be the reality. But until that happens, these mortgage lenders need to dig up customers from somewhere. So now they're digging into the bottom of the barrel and offering these 1% mortgage deals, where the Realtor Association is against this. They're trying to make the FHFA reverse their policy on this, guys. They want people to have higher credit score requirements and larger down payments to be able to qualify for a loan, rather than punish people that have good credit scores to pay for people who don't. And I think that's a pretty fair point. I don't usually agree with the things that the Realtor Association comes out and says, but this is definitely one of them. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you click the bell notification down below. YouTube will alert you every time I post a new video. And if you don't want to wait, check out my next one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.